Hi guys, I just want to give you a few examples of exactly how you can apply your ideas and concepts for your publishing proposals by using specific things that have been published before or books that have been published before. All right, so where did this idea come from? If you go in and look on the on YouTube and all these kinds of podcasts of Mark Manson, you'll read more about exactly where his idea for this book came from. But one idea that he definitely said is that there are so many self-help books and they all kind of follow the same, not routine, but formula kind of. And he just said, you know what, everyone is always how you have to go deeper, how to think about this, how to think about that. And then he came up with this idea about how about just giving a F basically, and not caring too much about certain things. This doesn't mean, if you read the book, it doesn't mean that you don't care about certain things. It just means don't sweat the small stuff. So basically that is what the book was about. So his angle was a little bit different, and obviously that is where the gap came in for this specific publication, and it is a bestseller as well, as you'll see here. #1 international bestseller. All right, so where did this idea come from? You can read more about that. So the title that I really want to get into is The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. Now, obviously, this is not a very okay title to use in regular terms, but if you go back and see how many of the books have this title in their title these days, there's even that one book called Go the Fuck to Sleep, which is a children's book as well. You'll see that the way they use the word basically is, yes, for shock value, but also to draw your attention to it. Even see how your cover is put together. All right. You remember I told you guys about how sometimes you don't need any photographs or anything else. Sometimes it's just a typographical thing that you do with a cover. All right. And this is exactly what happens. Okay, so the title was there. Maybe the title came afterwards. I don't know. Maybe it was the first thing that came into his mind. I don't know. But what I really just wanted to show you guys is that a title is very important. It can really sell a book, or it can make you maybe decide this is not really something that I'd like to read. So the title is quite important, the cover as well, obviously. So the content, if you think about the content, now for academic books, usually it's more divided up into specific a table of contents, whereas with fiction, normal trade fiction, you don't have a table of contents, obviously, because it's just all about how normal trade fiction, how that works, right? Whereas with your non-fiction, which this forms part of, let me just get to the table of contents. You'll see that it obviously has a table of contents, right? Things, and now you know what the title is, and the contents would, for example, include things like The Feedback Loop from Hell, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. So, Mark, what the F is the point of the book anyway? So what I just wanted to say with this, for example, chapter 2 says, happiness is a problem. It basically, your table of contents, the themes that you discuss, the tone of the book, everything should be tied into one idea and concept, right? So for example, the wording in the table of contents would have been different, then it wouldn't have gone with the rest of it. So the area of publishing or the sector, it's definitely trade, and it is nonfiction. All right, and it can be self-help, that's usually the subcategory of it. Your readership level, because this is a trade book, and it is, distributed in the general mass market, scene. Basically, your readership level would be, okay, you have to have matric at least, you can read this, or anyone from 16 and upwards, although with the wording. It's easy understandable. There are no hectic psychological kind of terminology. It's not like you're doing a psych book, on psychology or anything, or 101. It's not an academic textbook, so it's very accessible in terms of language and the tone of the book. The genre, as we said, it is definitely self-help, improvement, whatever they call it these days. Your content, we already talked about that. And then the author. The author is quite well known. He's worked on various things. He has his own website and blogs and things that he works on and does. So that is important. And he appears on a lot of talk shows as well. People like to interview him. Yes, so that is basically what I wanted to tell you guys. So extent and features, because this is a book, this is not a reference book like an academic textbook, so you want it to be able to read it easily. So you'll see that the spacing, the way it is laid out, they are not like tables and graphs and things, because this is not, it's basically a story that he tells, right? Like, this is what happens in life and this is what you do when this happens. All right, so it's a soft cover, definitely. It wouldn't make sense to do this in a hard cover necessarily. It's not a coffee table book. It's not something like, for example, this one, which we had about Andre Pierbrink and all his love affairs, etc., from Jonathan Ball, and you'll see that this was a hard cover, right? So yes, that's quite different than what you're trying to achieve with this. All right. So what else? The extent and features, the page extent. If you go to your self-help sections and you go to books that are very similar to this is 200 plus pages. I mean, it's like 206 pages. I wouldn't necessarily say that you'll get these kinds of books in like 400 pages or not, unless it's a really specific topic. So that's why you guys also have to go and look at the page extent of the books that you are commissioning or that you are proposing. And then, as we said, there are no extra elements or anything like this. They do say here at the back, he's a blogger with more than 2 million readers. He lives in New York City. The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck is his first book. All right, so although it's his first book, he is critically acclaimed for everything that he has done and said, etc., etc. But there are no special features in this book. I mean, there are no QR codes. There's nothing like go download the soundtrack or do this, which would be interesting, by the way. But the book is enough, right? This book doesn't really